Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Soulshine Radio. I have the glorious Dani Frederick here. You want to say hello for a moment?
Hello, everyone. Such an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And Dani is a divine feminine healer, songstress, and spiritual mentor. And we're new friends who reconnected again in this lifetime. And I just had to have her come on the podcast. And I'm sure we'll get into how all of that transpired. But can you just let our audience know a little bit more about who you be in the world and your service work?
Yes. I just love how you hold sacred space as well. We did a little drop in before going live here with you all. And so we've got a full house. We've got our guides here. We got our higher selves. We have each other. So it's really, really great to be here. And yeah, my name's Dani Frederick. Who am I in the world? I really just see myself as a frequency holder of the feminine codes and the sacred mysteries. And that's what I've dedicated my life to. So you can find me on Spotify, you can find me at retreats, you can find me facilitating and teaching, but whenever or whatever I'm doing, um, it's really about just giving that permission slip to ourselves to come home to who we really are. So
I'm already taking notes over here. And what's funny is when we dropped into sacred space and I opened up the circle here, I was like, is there any other words that you want to add? And you go, let's party. Our guides are here. We're ready. And this is why I feel so connected to you, because I was connected to you through Maren Bach Antonsen, and you released a new single as an emerging artist. And we get to talk all about that. And I joined. I don't really engage in a lot of free offerings anymore or programs. And I just was like, this feels yummy. And I immediately loved your vibe.
Mm.
And then I fangirled over you for a moment and sent you an IG message, and we had a conversation, and we've had,
And I fangirled back.
Yeah. What did I say to you? I said, I basically reflected to you the vibe that I was feeling from connecting our humanity with our spirituality. And you were like, I feel so seen. So do you want to talk about exactly that, like the element and the individuality that you're bringing to spirituality, which sometimes when we have, right, we have like the box of religion and we have the box of spirituality that sometimes the world wants to put us in, and there's an expectation of what that gets to look like. So can we just go there for a minute, wherever you want to start?
I think I want to start by burning down the box. Just all boxes. Let's just burn them.
Done.
And it's so funny because I didn't really understand my flavor of spirituality until people like yourself would come up and start reflecting it to me. Because to me, spirituality was always just becoming my authentic self, becoming my authentic self. What's my truth? What's most loving? What's most self-honoring? What's most self-revering? And I find that through that, I've become this really quote unquote spiritual person. And I always thought that that's just what everyone thought spirituality was. But then you start to have more conversations and get in more circles and quickly learn that there's just so many nuances to the human experience, right? And everyone has a different perspective. And actually, a call I was just on before this was all around um, people who, they're holding this priestess archetype and they want to give themselves permission to be in more of what they're calling, what they had labeled like the dark goddess of like boundaries and cutting people off and things like that. And to me, I'm like, of course, like people say diamonds are a girl's best friends. I'm like, boundaries are a girl's best friend. And when you can create boundaries that are self-loving, not boundaries because you want to cut yourself off from the world or because you have resistance or you're like, I hate you or you did this to me, boundary. But when you can come from
Yeah.
a neutral place of like, okay, it's most self-loving for me right now to not be in this relationship or to not be in this environment, and I can love this person from afar, like that's a really beautiful thing that
Mm.
allows you to then start to dig more and more of your light up. Because at the end of the day, to me, spirituality is letting go releasing so that you can become more of who you are. It's all already in there. We just put a bunch of shit on top of it. So we just
Yeah.
got to clear the shit, clear out the shit so that you can shine. I think that can be the tagline of this episode.
I love it. What's funny is I was in a mentorship program a couple of years ago, and they're like, if you have an ice cream cone with shit on the bottom and you just keep adding scoops of ice cream, you're still going to smell the shit that's
exactly.
And I do call it our sacred shit. And to me, that is the work of the priestess. That is the work of the divine feminine leader, right? Is welcoming the wholeness of the human experience, the shadow, the light, and everything in between. And that is why I love my sacred shit, because it means that I'm growing, and it's all about our relationship with the shit. Because it never stops, right? It's not like all of a sudden things just stop happening in our lives. Like, we're humans, there's things, there's finances, there's natural disasters, we lose people, right? There's shifts that happen in the collective and in our individual lives. And yeah, that feels very resonant, what you're expressing. And I think it's interesting, right? When we meet people for the first time in this lifetime, for example, you and I, and then we recognize, like, okay, I'm not the only one. Sometimes it can feel isolating to feel this level of same thing. I call it discernment because for me, boundaries, it was a personal decision because I couldn't break through from that shadowy form of boundary that was from the wound. So this is the power of, like, we just do what's best for us, but we're saying the same thing, is it's a clear boundary line of discernment, right? A clear sacred no in love with an open heart from a place of neutrality, right? From a place of knowing that we're not separate at all as humans. So
Yeah.
thank you
And I
for
love what you
sharing.
said there about, like, it's really about the frequency, right? So boundary was the correct word for me. It's not the correct word for you. It could feel really heavy. And so discernment is your key code. So it's kind of like we're gathering, and we're experimenters, and we're out here and we're gathering what key codes unlocks more of myself so that I can know and love more of me and be more of me in the world. Because I do think as more and more of our authentic selves come online, it really just becomes that much easier to hold that open-hearted space. We can't hold that open-hearted space that allows things to come into, divine order upon their own accord around us when we feel overshadowed or cut off or shamed or whatever we're doing in our internal world in some way. So the more that, in my experience, the more I could make spaciousness in my body, the more that spaciousness was reflected around me. And I didn't have to do the whole, like, fix,
Yeah.
right? One of my teachers, Maren Bach Antonsen, who we met through, she calls these things reversal codes. And I think that's a huge reversal code that we have right now, is growing up in an overly unbalanced, I'll say, masculine paradigm, is the solutionizers and the fixers, and that's rewarded. And how many times are we, like, talking with a friend and they solutionize for us, and it's like, oh, that actually, like, kind of hurts, and it, like, stops the flow. And so I find that, when we can kind of reverse that, and rather than being fixers, we can be frequency holders and just let things kind of come into divine order on their own time. We don't actually have to work that hard, and we can work magic.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is so juicy. And what you just reminded me of is I had a sister, I'm in the middle of launching a new program. It sounds like you are as well. And I had a sister like, oh, wow, what you're offering sounds very similar to what I used to offer. If you want me to, like, share anything that I have, any content, any delivery methods, if you want to bounce ideas. And I just said, thank you. And what's most helpful for me right now is actually accountability in being the divine in action and being held in this sacred work that I'm doing and continuing to forge on and to not play small and to be visible. And actually what I'm not doing is gathering any feedback at all prior to launching anything from any human being, because that was so much of my old story. And I would love to hear the moment. Well, I have so many questions, but what did you have an epiphany moment, or was it a slow, like constant tug of feeling out of alignment? Have you always felt connected spiritually? Because we have different paths, and I'm sure we have different tools and modalities, but it's the same thing. We pause, we create stillness to deeply listen, to create spaciousness, and then all of that gets filled with life force and light and service and joy and all of the things that we love. And then life just becomes more joyful and simpler and more easeful. Doesn't mean there's not hard stuff, but for the most part, the overarching resonance is like, I love my life. Can you agree with that?
Yes, and I will say mine came about in a very special moment of desperation. So that was
Mine
my
too.
path. Yeah. So I
Yeah, so
woke
maybe
up.
tell people, yeah, like maybe tell people when your awakening journey started, how old you were, and maybe give some details for people who might be feeling hopeless in this moment.
Yeah, of course. So gosh, I was 25-ish, maybe. I'm going to be 34 this month, or in April, I guess, which is a couple days away. So I
Woohoo!
was,
Happy birthday! Happy solar return!
thank you, thank you. Yes, it feels so good, especially this year of 33 is really everything that people told me to be as far as like your Christed year. So it's very, very interesting. But okay, so my moment of awakening happened probably around like 3 a.m. when I was like 25, and I just woke up and I looked over at my partner at the time. We had been together for like 5.5 years. I have the utmost respect for him. He's a beautiful human. And I just said, like, I am so miserable. I'm so miserable. Why do I live here? I don't feel fulfilled. I have no friends here. I don't like it here. And at the time I was living in, should I say the state? I don't know if that's going to offend people. Look, here's the deal. I'm going to drop it. And it's just my experience. I'm not saying that, where I grew up is bad or wrong or good or bad, but I was Wisconsin born and raised. I always felt really, really out of place in a small town. People are lovely, but people are also less open-minded. And at least that was my experience. I don't want to label any populace, but I then went to college. I had met this beautiful man and we were together for 5.5 years. And I had always wanted to leave Wisconsin because I just felt like an outsider. And so that was part of it. Is I went through now I can look back and know this, but I didn't know at the time. There was so much self-abandonment. It was like, nope, I got this really good job that you don't say no to. Like everyone wants this job. They hire like less than 1% of applicants. And so it's like, okay, I'm going to do this job. This job was so out of alignment for me. It was like project management and whatnot and technology and software, but I was good at it because I was one of those people that was like, do you need me to be a circle? I'll be a circle. Do you need me to be a triangle? I'll be a triangle. Like whatever you need, I'll do it. Just pay me. Right. And now that I'm like where I'm at now, I realized it was like part of the healing that I've had to done is like a wound around prostitution. Like that's really a strong word, but that's really at my core what I was doing was prostituting myself out, and just so much self-abandonment. And so anyways, I'm in this beautiful relationship and it's great on paper. And so I'm staying and, 5.5 years passed and I just woke up and I was like, wow, I'm in this place that I don't like. I'm in a job that I hate. I'm not fulfilled. I feel like I don't connect with anyone. I have no friends. All my friends are like through my partner at the time. And it just dawned on me that we had to break up. And I just needed to start totally new and understand what it was to like choose myself. And part of that is I always had this driving force since I was a kid of thinking that I'm supposed to live like this wildly fulfilled life. And people would tell me that that's fantasy. And no, you collect your money at work and then you have fun outside of work. And that just never resonated for me. I was like, absolutely not. That's not what we're here to do. That's not the life I choose to live. And so, we had a beautiful decoupling, I'll call it, because we still had to live together for a little bit after that. Because of course, in in my great timing, we had just signed our lease for
course.
the next year. And I was like, here we go. So we separated, and 4 months later I moved to Manhattan, and I just remember calling my mom and saying, like, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, like, know that I died happy, because I moved there and I felt like, oh, I found my people. Like, my people are here. They get my sarcasm and my humor, and I'm making friends quickly. And the pace of the city just felt right to my nervous system. And it was the medicine I needed at the time. Right now I could not live in Manhattan. I would be way too overstimulated. I'm more of like a beach girl now, and I'm sure my next chapter is going to look different as well. But that was the first thing where I had an amazing job on paper, an amazing partner on paper, nice apartment, and it's like I had to just choose myself of, hey, I know that everything on paper and everyone's telling me I have this beautiful life, but I feel like shit. So what am I going to do about it? And I just had to deal with it, because no one could understand. But I knew that if I was in that same place another 5 years down the road, I'm just hopping out the window at that point, like, game over.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing. I can absolutely relate. And I know for me, it was a little bit later in my 20s, right? And it seems like this is kind of what happens, is it's like, wait, is this my life, or is this somebody else's life that somebody, parents, society, movies, TV, Hollywood, whatever it is, pop culture told you how it needed to look? And I also love that you were like, should I say the state? Because this also goes to show us, like, there's, I want to give you permission and remind your inner child, and just remind the part of you that doesn't want to share it. It's like, yeah, we're allowed to not like a state, or a state may not work. Just like with New York, right? You're like, oh my gosh, I could never do that now. The invitation to always change our mind. What's funny is everybody knows now that I'm moving to North Carolina, and I've literally had people to my face say, like, this person just moved there and they hate it, or, oh my gosh, why do you want to move there? Or, I mean, it's just like, because now oh my gosh, my internet's kicking out. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I was going to say,
What the heck is going on? We're breaking the internet. We're just going to keep rolling.
there's just too much light. It's fine. They can't handle it.
It's all good. Sorry, Brendan, you're going to be editing a lot this round.
We love you, Brendan. Thank you for your service.
You're the best. So what's interesting about what I realize is there's a part of me that would get triggered by, like, how dare you project onto me with my excitement to move to North Carolina. And then I get to check myself of, like, wait, there could be a million reasons why. I mean, this person may not like the cold. Like, this person could have an ex-lover in North Carolina, and all of a sudden everything North Carolina they hate. And that's where you get to just be like, it's all good. Like, this is my life. This is what I'm choosing. So I just wanted to make light of that, right? Because this is the human experience that comes on, like, should I say this thing? Because we don't want to offend people. But I've never been to Wisconsin, so I have a totally neutral stance, and I still may visit one day.
And that's the thing too. It's like, how can we be so in our being and so in that neutrality where we know that, no, it's just like, water off a duck's back, or that, like, other people's opinions, if someone's listening here of, okay, yeah, you can still come to Wisconsin and enjoy the cheese curds. Like, it's great. We have great stuff, whatever. Yeah, I think that's so beautiful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's also like, when we start to really connect with divine orchestration, like, it needed to happen that way for you to get to New York and have your experience there. And now let's talk about your nomadness, because you're just traveling all over the world. Like, clearly this is part of your soul journey in human form, right? Is to explore different parts of the world. And I've always felt the same way. I've always wanted to explore other cultures. I've been all over the world since such a young age. And I just love to travel, because I'm like, I want to meet new people. I want to see things. Like, I just want to be able to be immersed in the experience of life. So yeah, let's talk about that. How did that happen?
It's so funny, because I was totally the opposite. I, like, never traveled. I didn't really get why people traveled. I had friends that traveled. It never interested me. And, you know, I don't know where this comes in. I know that we talked about you have some human design background, but I've heard it through the human design system. I've heard it through some other systems and healers and sessions that there's like 3 distinct parts to my life. And I really feel like the first part was like a no travel, be as suffocated as possible, be, in self-abandonment, all of these things. So I can learn the opposite of that and what that looks like. And so I didn't go outside of the country. I mean, maybe Mexico a couple times, but I'm not going to count that. But like really out of the country on my own until I was probably like 27. And especially the past 2 years, it's just really revved up. And I'm a Sagittarius rising, and I feel like it's really me stepping it. Are you? Of course you are. Of course you are. And I really just feel that fire coming online in a big way. And so I felt a ton of resonance with Glastonbury in the UK, and really feeling like that whole area. I'm going to go to Scotland later this year, Ireland, hopefully someday. I keep trying to get there for some reason. I keep being rerouted. So it's not the right time for me, but one day I will be in Ireland. And I just feel like the King Arthur codes coming online for the world, and those heart codes really coming on in a really big way, and feeling like they all stem from there, and feeling really at home when I go there. I also went to Kauai and went there for 3 weeks. And that's a place that I've probably gone 4 or 5 times in the past 2 years, before I didn't even know that island existed. And I just share that because it's like I'm getting called to places where there's medicine for me and stories, soul stories to remember. And then I was in Egypt for 2 weeks recently. And I'm going to be going back to Glastonbury. So it's all super divine. I feel really, really grateful to be able to not only travel, but to be on this life path where I can tune into the subtleties and understand like what past lives have been there and what wisdom is there for me to really unlock within myself and bring forward in the present day.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been definitely, we talked about this in advance, that we have some similar, there's some similar ley lines that are being crossed over in where we're being called. And actually Marin is directly connected to what initiated my pilgrimage trip to Egypt. And I don't even know what year that was. I think it was April. It was actually a year ago, just around the eclipse time. So we're about to enter the eclipse portal soon. And I think that this is where I want to go next, because this is when you start to flex the trust muscle and get out of your own way. Like, to any probably normal quote unquote person, it's like, why are you going to go to the same place so many times? And there's all these places to go, and just trusting, right? Trusting in, for example, financially, like, right? Trusting that you'll be able to pay for it, trusting that it's all going to work out when you're there, trusting in the timing of it all, trusting in there's a reason why I'm supposed to be going to this particular part of the world this many times. So maybe you can share some of, obviously mine was in my late 20s as well. I'm 36. So it's been over a decade, but I would say really in the last couple of years, probably late 2019, early 2020. So maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, I started waking up in big ways, and it wasn't a gradual thing. It was like a very like the fire, right? Like it was this awakening journey, and it was a little confusing at first. And I still, because it's like the mind wants to understand and it's us trying to control it. So I'm just curious to know, maybe if you can share what's helped you, what supported you in trusting your inner compass, and trusting your intuition, and being truly spirit led, right? Like going where the divine takes you, launching new offerings in the world, using your voice in the world, which we'll get into in a bit. Do you have any, like, because I know you like to bring the practicality in, and we'll talk about that in your bodies of work. Maybe if you can share with the audience, what are some things that you do to help you connect and to clear your channels and to be open to possibility of where your soul is leading you to next?
I love this so much. Well, first of all, I'm really quiet about my shit. I am not airing it. I don't let people know what I'm up to. There are certain sisters I have when they call and we'll do a check-in and it's like, hey, I'm launching this, or this is what I'm thinking about. But other than that, I don't share it with family. I don't share it with quote unquote friends. I don't share with colleagues because I want to reserve the right to change my mind. And I also, just like you were saying, as a society, we're kind of conditioned to give our 2 cents, right? And I don't want anyone's 2 cents infiltrating the truth of my experience until it's really, really integrated. So, like, I'm not going to come on here and talk about something unless it's something that, like, that has been tried and true in my path, because I don't want to invite any judgment around something that's growing in me. It's kind of like when you're beginning to grow vegetables and the little seedlings coming up, like, you have it in a little jar and you protect it. It's not just out there in the storm in your yard, ready for like a wolf to come eat it, right? So I do think discernment around knowing what's true for you and what it needs to grow has been like such an incredible tactic, for lack of a better word, for me, of really letting something become anchored within my being and allowing it just to speak for itself rather than saying, hey, here's what I'm up to, or here's what I'm working on, except with like a select few people. Now, as far as clearing, I love that you bring this up because especially right now, I think this is so important for everyone and in children as well. In fact, I was just talking with a friend who had reached out because she was like, hey, I'm like starting to see numbers everywhere, like the same number. And, I'm kind of like down for the spiritual, but not like, you're the spiritual person I know. Can we hop on a call? Right. And I hadn't spoken with her in probably 5 years, but I do have those relationships where it's like, if you need me, call me. Right. And so we hopped on and we were talking actually about um, clearing the energy of her children acting out in some ways, because we're all sponges. And especially right now with the collective, everything that's getting kicked up, it's really important that we keep our energetic fields clean and our children's energetic fields clean. And she actually noticed as she was cleaning the field, a big change in her child's behavior. Because what can happen is we can take on judgments, emotions, thought forms that are not ours just because we're going out into the world to the grocery store and we're coming back. And so just like we take a shower for our physical bodies, we need to take showers for our energetic bodies. And it can look really, really simple. I think it's important to do in the morning and in the evenings. And it can be as simple as putting your hand on your heart and just saying, okay, I now release all that is not mine. I'm in a bubble of light. Only light can be here and only light may come to me. Done. It doesn't have to be some huge thing, although because I am a glutton for spirit in some ways, I do love to make it a huge thing. I love the candles and the oils and, the
Totally.
Florida water and the oracle cards and the whole thing. I love a good spirit jam sesh and clearing sesh, but I do think that that's one way to stay really connected to your heart and to spirit, is to say, look, I'm here for love and I'm connected. And anything that keeps me from being connected is no longer welcome in my field.
Mm,
Period. We're done. So
mm. Yeah. And what I'm hearing from you for both is really like that outside, right? It's like the seen and unseen, like stuff that gets in the way and murks things up of the purity of our essence, right? So the first was just like people coming into our field that are doing their best, that just want to help and might like say, hey, I think you should do this, 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 and this. And then there's that little, we start to have that little piece of our mental chatter that starts to be like, you sure you don't want to do this? You sure you don't want to make this an option? You sure you don't want to rewrite this thing or change this thing or delay it or start it sooner? And then what you're saying about, clearing our field, I mean, I'm like twice a day. I do it. I do it before I get on every call. We did it before
yeah.
here because, and this is what I'm hearing from you is for both of them, it requires slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
It requires the spaciousness and the pause and the breath when somebody gives us unsolicited feedback, to again not take that on and to just say thank you and to just let it go and let it roll off your back, or to say, actually, this is, I'm in a space of whatever. Like I said, I'm in a space of really practicing trusting my intuitive self and the purity of my essence. And I'm just saying no to everyone else. And that requires a lot of devotion and a lot of discipline. So all of these things that Dani and I are talking about, it's not like we just woke up and all of a sudden we claimed it and it was done forever. That's called you're evolved and ascended and you're likely no longer on planet Earth. Like this is part of it. It's the like, oh, there it is again. Oh, there it is again. Like there's an opportunity for me to stand in my innate power. There's an opportunity to use my voice. There's an opportunity to slow down and to pause and say, is this really my thought? Is this really my choice? So thank you for giving two really simple practices for our community. And if you're listening to this podcast, you likely are connected spiritually, I would imagine, or you're dabbling. But if you're new, I love that you're helping a friend that has a child, because this is about open-mindedness. Like the moment that we say, I don't believe this isn't true, because science is starting to prove so much. I mean, there's so much that the naked eye can't see. So just try it. If you're feeling icky, I just did a 15-minute cardio blast outside in my backyard, and I was like using breath and sound and movement, and I was feeling a lot of stuff. Like I was feeling anxiety coming out, and just being behind the computer for a couple hours before that and just letting it go. And then it just becomes a part of life. And I want to circle back to what you said, because this is something that it sounds like you've kind of always embodied and held. And it was very new for me. And it came through in meditation and prayer. I don't even know, maybe a year ago or so, which is authenticity is spirituality, period. And there's no separation. So when we're doing our priestess work and when we're in circle and when we're doing all these things and on these pilgrimage trips, it's no different than going to the grocery store, than spending time with a friend and her child and helping her through that, than eating your favorite meal. And so I wish I knew you during those times where I didn't recognize because it simplified everything for me. Like point blank, I'm a multidimensional being, and just me being my authentic self is spiritual, period. There is nothing more I need to do but be me. That's it. That feels so much better.
I mean, I have full body chills when you say that, because again, it's about getting rid of everything that's not there. Right. So, I think there can be this projection onto spiritual people of, wow, like I've heard the following statement before, especially because I'm a fire, I'm Aries, I'm Sag, like it has been a long road of me coming into relationship with my feelings and my anger and my rage, and being able to transmute that into actual fuel and power and compassion, rather than like nails gouging someone's eyes out. And it's like, oh, for all that meditation, you sure like aren't that Zen.
I've gotten
like,
that
oh,
too.
aren't you supposed to be like, you're not like very spiritual? And it's like, look, if you're a light worker, which anyone listening to this podcast is, it's exactly what you said. It's not that you become spiritual and it all goes away. In fact, if anything, it probably steps up its game, and you're only going to become more sensitive and feel more things. What's different is you begin to grow the musculature to actually do emotional alchemy, where you're no longer in reaction and spewing your baggage over whoever's around you or whatever's around you, but you realize this compassion of, okay, here's this trigger, here's this wound, here's where it comes from. Maybe sometimes you have that story, like, okay, this childhood trauma. And sometimes you don't have the story. You don't always have to. Sometimes it's collective. You're not going to have a story. And it's like, hey, here's this emotion. What does it here to help me learn? Oh, wow, I'm really pissed right now. Oh, I definitely let that person cross my boundary. Like, what's my accountability? And can I have so much compassion for myself and the other person, that everyone's doing their best at every given moment, point blank, period. Even a psychotic murderer is doing the very best they can on this earth plane. I'm not excusing any of the actions, But what I'm doing is I'm inviting compassion and understanding to, okay, let me come into neutrality. It doesn't mean that people don't need to be held accountable, but what it does mean is I realize what's within my control, what's not within my control. And I'm choosing to love this part of myself and see this part of myself and witness this part of myself rather than shoving it down and going and watching TV or whatever. But I'm going to sit here, I'm going to breathe, and I'm going to release. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to breathe and I'm going to release. Because what happens is, as you know, like trauma is trapped in our body. So we need to give it that outlet to release, but can we do it in a way that is safe for us and others? And that's private, because oftentimes whoever's triggering us, it's not actually about them. The universe is very, very loving. And you know what it wants? It wants to clear all the shit out of our shit. So it's going to orchestrate these things of like, oh, Dani has that. Oh, I'll give you a perfect example. You know, as you know, and we'll get to later in this podcast, I do a lot around vocal reclamation and the feminine voice and opening that up. And so, you know, my soul designed my life perfectly to be told when I was little that I'm too loud, I sing too high, I talk too fast, you know, whatever. I was just wrong in my expression. And I recently, when I went to Egypt, had a huge inner child healing. And it's so funny because I was pulling oracle cards before I went, like seeing what's this trip mean for me? Like, I want to be like this awesome priestess, whatever. And and I kept getting this inner child healing card. And I was like, oh, it's probably because we're going to be playing drums and sistrums and we're going to be in music and I'll just be in like my full joy, my full childlike joy. I can't wait. No. It was 8 hours of me crying in a room by myself, which was the inner child healing. And what had come up, you know, I've done so much work around this, but it's still there, that wound. And I had overheard someone just saying something about like, oh, people who sing loud are like full of ego, like they just want to be heard. And in that moment, like I felt my little girl like literally go down into a cave. It's like I had worked so hard to get her out of the cave. She still wasn't like fully in maturation yet, but she was out of the cave. And now she went to the cave, like she shut the rock over the cave door. And my sister, who was, my priestess sister, not a blood sister, she felt it in that moment because I had confided in her later. I was like, I need to talk this out with you. And then I need to go work it out on my own, but it needs to be witnessed by two people, I feel like. And she's like, I felt that part of you leave in that moment. It was that visceral. And so I went into my room and I just sat there and I talked to that little girl and I just cried and I cried and I cried and validated her feelings that she feels like she doesn't have a voice, that she's not welcome, that people don't like her, that she's stupid, you know, all these voices that come up. And I just held space. I didn't make her wrong and I didn't try to prove her right. I wasn't like, people shouldn't say that. It's like, no, wow. Yeah, I feel this way. Yeah, that sucks. And I just kept crying and I just stuck with it because I was like, fuck this. I'm getting her out. I have spent so many years. I am not leaving this fucking room until she's back. So, and it got to the point where it was incredibly profound. And all of a sudden I saw her come out of the cave in my mind's eye. And not only did she come out of the cave, but she had wings and she was like fully healed. And she was like, now let me show you the magic. And she like took my hand and the Aladdin song of like a whole new world like started playing in my mind. It was like this whole thing. And it really was a new world. Like I left that room and I literally was like, I am on a new timeline because not only did I feel better, but I truly, truly felt, and I had known this before and been able to kind of get to this place in a mental way, but this was a full body gratitude for the person who triggered me. I wanted to go up to him and like lay one on him, like a big smooch and just be like, thank you for saying that comment. Like I have more of myself. I have more of my power. I am like, that piece of me now is fully untouchable. She's still flying in the ethers. So I think I don't even know how I got on this story, but point being, I think is the triggers are so powerful. And when we can do that emotional alchemy, we become more and more of ourselves. And it's never about the external. It's always about the universe orchestrating these situations for us to see if we're game, you know? Life is like, you want to live a beautiful life? Great, let's clear you out. Are you going to lean in or are you going to lean out?
Oh my gosh, so many synchronicities. And I'm glad that you said what you said at the beginning around, like, I don't know the exact words, but like a serial killer, mass murderer, right? Like, is doing the best that they can. I've said that on the podcast several different ways, and I've gotten a lot of backlash in different settings for the level of leadership that I feel is very important for my authenticity at this point in time, also knowing that I'm doing my best to practice it at any given moment. And one thing that I know Marin said that stuck with me that I use all the time is everything on this planet is either an act of love or a cry out for love. And that is the level of compassion that I feel the world needs right now. And then I love the visceral example because I had the same freaking experience in my own way in Egypt. And
oh, God bless Egypt.
God bless Egypt. And what was funny is I didn't have any intentions. I did not want to, I said yes. And then I had a massive, I'm not going. It was that kind of thing. Like, I was like, I was trying to think of all the reasons not to go. And I ended up going. And of course it was the most amazing time. But what kept coming through was like fear of my authentic self. And in the Philae and Isis's temple and at Philae, I had a very profound experience. And there was some other women who were like, oh, wow. It was like, I took it as projection or judgment or like, I can't do that, or how does she do that? Or I can't let myself surrender. And for me, it was like, I'm too much. I should hide. I should stop myself from feeling, from being, from having these divine experiences. And again, it was that same piece where I got to look at that, like, where am I hiding who I am for the sake of other people? And I'm actually creating a powerlessness in the other person when I play small. Like, I'm showing other people what's possible. I'm liberating others through my own liberation. And just like, again, allowing the divine to pour through me. And I mean, I've had several of those experiences where I remember, but I don't. And I'm like, I was there, but I wasn't. And it was just such an ancient, like, visceral cry, guttural healing. And I held nothing back. And there were times in the trip where I did still hold myself back a little bit, but I kept being like, what is that? Right? Like, it wasn't like all of a sudden it was clear and it was gone forever. But it was just that awareness. And now, ever since I got back, I keep leaning into, where am I not being fully expressed to keep other people feeling safe and in their comfort zones, and demonizing or questioning or being in fear of my human experience. So thank you. So Egypt, Egypt does the job.
Egypt. And yeah, it's like you said, you brought up devotion earlier. Like, to me, devotion is like choosing yourself over and over again, choosing what you know to be true, choosing love over and over again. And it's practice. It's practice. It's practice. We're never there. Otherwise, like you said,
Totally.
we'd be enlightened masters.
And that's what I really believe this podcast is all about. Like, I don't know shit. And I love that I don't know shit. I am only doing what I believe is best for myself and in service to the highest timeline of this planet. And as long as I'm doing my best to walk with an open heart and to keep saying yes to myself, that's it. And that's what I'm feeling from you, which is why I brought you on here. So I would love to know quickly, before we share everything that you're up to, using your voice. Of course, you had that massive clearing because of what you're creating and putting out into the world. But I want to know, because I don't know if I've ever defined this on the podcast before. What is a priestess to you? What does the priestess archetype mean to you?
I think about this all the time. Because it's another one of those things, right? Where I do feel like there is an essence, there is a template to this archetype. And I do believe that every single man or woman is bringing their own flavor and bringing, their puzzle piece of the truth through. And I think one of the biggest things is going back to being that frequency holder and making yourself a vessel for divine mother, however you want to relate to like spirit to fill you up, so that people and things around you can come into resonance with that. So again, rather than saying, I want peace, and telling people, hey, like, you are taking peace away from me. You're too loud. You're too this, you're too that. Or like, let me fix your life. Like, oh, look how you're behaving this way and it's robbing you of peace. And, going back into that fixing and solutionizing archetype that we've all been conditioned to, unplugging from that and say, okay, how do I cultivate peace within myself? And knowing that if I'm in a chaotic space and I just am holding the peace, I don't need to say anything, that invites what's ready, willing, and able to align to that according to divine love and divine timing and divine wisdom to come into divine order and resonance with that peace. And I'll give you an example, because I always like to bring it down to like a practical story, is when I first, and this was before I even knew what a priestess was, before I knew what spirituality was, it was really me just coming into choosing myself and coming into self-awareness around patterns and then trying new things is really where I was. But I was already doing some of the priestess arts of like space holding. So I remember I was going to dinner with a girlfriend and I was really hyper masculine. You had a problem, I was going to fix it. I was going to give you all the suggestions. I was going to give you notes, receipts, consultation, advice, you name it. Like, what do you want? I have it all, right? Which, God bless my friends. I'm sure that was a nightmare. But I had learned a little bit. I think I was reading Alison Armstrong at the time, and she does a lot of work around the masculine and the feminine. And so I just told myself, you know what? I'm going to listen to this person. And every time I want to interject, I'm just not going to, for at least 3 times. So when I feel myself going to be like, oh, you should do this, like, I'm just going to stay quiet. And then if a 4th time comes up, I'm going to ask a question instead of giving an answer. And I'm going to stay curious. And that was my whole plan. So, and that was my whole practice for myself. And it was beautiful. So, the dinner went great. There were tears. It was beautiful. And we're walking home. And she was like, I want to let you know that was better than any therapy session I've ever experienced. And she had been going to therapy for years. And all I did was I held the frequency of, I know that you are a badass. I was looking over at her. And in my mind's eye, I was just saying, like, you are beautiful. You're amazing. You are strong. You are everything. I didn't say that, but I held that. I held the highest potential for her in my mind's eye while I held space. And what happened? She came to her own conclusion. She came to her own answers, because, there's so many times when we think we have the answer for someone and we don't, but they do. And they just need us to hold that space to help them remember that they do. So I do feel like a big part of being a priestess is being a space holder and a frequency holder for people to discover their own truth. It's not about, here's the priestess path, here's dogma and introducing parameters and structures. It's about, hey, here's what I've found has really helped me to hold the frequency and cultivate the frequency of unconditional love. Am I unconditionally loving all the time? Absolutely fucking not, especially not with myself. So, but it's like, it's the goal that I have, and it's the North Star that I hold.
Totally.
And so that to me is what a priestess is a cultivator of unconditional love, a space holder, a frequency holder, and someone who's here to birth new paradigms and trust in the sacred mysteries that open up from within, not taught to us in books or the outside world.
Yes. That's my favorite definition I've ever heard. So thank you. And I love that practice because I absolutely know, right? It was like, I'm going to fix everybody else and I'm going to help everybody else so I don't have to look at myself. That was my story before my awakening. And it's the same with my work. It's the same. It's what I teach others. I don't teach you anything that doesn't already live inside of you. What I teach you is to open the door that's already there. You just got to, remove some of the dust and some of the cobwebs that are in there. Right. And so this is it. Like, Dani and I didn't know each other. There's a reason why, right? Because this is universal intelligence. This is not anything that we made up. This is not anything that we learned from a book. Maybe we read something or somebody activated something that already was dormant within us through hearing them, through being with them, through sacred ritual, through sacred travel. but this is the difference between knowledge and wisdom. So I wanted to ask you that question because we're coming up to the end of our time here together today, and you have a new single out called The Priestess. Is it Reawakens?
Yes, the priestess reawakens, because just like you said, right, things are dormant, but we've been this stuff in other lifetimes. And so it's just a matter of remembering and letting her come online.
Yes. So we're going to make sure you get all the juicy goodness in the show notes. Okay. So when I listen to it, I love it because it's a chant. So do you have a couple extra minutes to just explain
Yeah.
because how long is the song? It's like it's not like,
I
you're,
don't even know. I would have to,
okay.
you know what? Here, I have it right here. Let me just look. It's
'Cause
probably like 3 minutes.
Yeah, I feel like it's just a little jolt in the car, and I love it because I think I told you, I'm like, it feels like a little bit savage in there. Like it's just like, and that's why I love it, because I've heard so many chants, I've heard so many priestess songs, right? So many songstresses, and this has like a vibe, and I love it because it's your vibe, it's your flavor. It's almost like there's a zillion instruments in the world that are all playing at the same tune, right? And your instrument has a little bit of like, and I love that. I can connect to that.
Oh, thank you, sister, for seeing me. I appreciate you. And yes, here's the thing. I like, it's like spirit slay, like, let's go. Spirit is sexy, like, spirit is powerful. And spirit is also all the other things, right? Like, we talk about there's other priestess songs out there, and I'm so grateful for all the other songstresses because they have awakened in me. And what I feel like my calling is to do is, cool, like when we want to like go to the club, like let's bring spirit with us. Like, let's not have things be separate. So to me, I'm like, let's make a fucking vibe, and like, let's know who we are. Let's own our power. And, frequency is so powerful. And a lot of the music that is mainstream, if you reach a certain level of self-awareness, you'll wake up realizing that if you were in a store, like the grocery store, and they were playing a song, you're going to wake up with that song in your head. It's actually playing in the background, and that programs you. So you can be programmed to lean more into separation, to lean more into chaos, to lean more into doubt. You can also program yourself to lean more into power, more into love. It's really not rocket science. I mean,
Yeah.
it is quantum physics, but it's not rocket science. And so for me, I'm like, wow, I really want to be able to go to my Spotify and play some fucking jams, and also feel like I'm still ascending and evolving at the same time. Because what was happening for me is I was like, oh, I love some of these mainstream playlists, but I know afterwards I'm going to have to like do work to get like my light quotient back up there. It's like, if you're going to choose like, okay, I'm going to have this margarita, like, look, nothing's wrong with having a margarita if that's your jam. But it's like, if I do that, I know like, okay, like tomorrow, like I'm not going to be my best self. And, I'm going to have to do some extra work to get back to feeling super anchored in who I am. And so that was really, that's really my goal with the music that I'm releasing on Spotify, is to have it be something that you can vibe to and jam to.
Yeah. And just so much of what you shared is about self-expression, right? About using your voice, obviously what you shared about with Egypt. And I remember us even connecting and you talking about like releasing perfectionism, right? There's just so much that you're right? Like, because there's always that piece of like, oh, it's got to be perfect. When is something ever done? I remember when I started painting again with my friend Pat, I'm like, how don't you know when it's done? He's like, sometimes you just got to say it's done, because the mind will be like, keep going. There's a little bit more. You want to be perfect. Right. And so I love that you're like, yeah, because again, it's like the frequency and the intention behind the music. And I got my first, crystal sound bowl after it was like everything kind of activated. I'm going to make a drum soon. And I've always used music in my work, and I've always felt really connected to music. And I agree. It's the same reason why my spirit teams like get on TikTok and I'm resisting it, because I can't take the vibration. But this is why people like you, right? For me, it's like, okay, in social media, like this, we need to sprinkle a little bit of light
We need some
there.
fairy dust.
And it's the same thing with pop culture, really everything, right? With music. And it's true. Like a lot of these reels that we're seeing, like the people don't even understand the lyrics and the frequency behind these, these songs that are going viral. So I want to thank you, right? Because this is about intentionality, right? This is about self-expression. This is about creativity. You're having fun. Your brother's producing your music, which is amazing.
Yes,
So
it is a family affair. And I'll just add really quickly for anyone out there who's like wondering, should I do the thing? And well, side note, I also got full body chills when you said TikTok. So you're obviously, so you've got to go there, have fun. Let me know how it is.
Oh, I've been on it.
You're on it. Okay.
I've kicked and screamed the entire way. I resisted it for like 6 months. I'm still there, but I'm like, okay, I got to like really be intentional about
Well,
this.
you're doing the work. Thank you for going there. Yeah, because that was full body chills. And the thing is, if I worried about being perfect, the song still wouldn't be out. I've learned enough in my trials and tribulations of just, trying to lean into creativity and getting a project off the ground and then not having it go anywhere because of my perfectionism, where I kind of knew like the red flags to look for. So I do believe nothing in our experience is ever wasted. There's so many creative projects in my wake that just died because of my perfectionism, but they were all perfect because this time around, my brother sent it to me and I had this, concert planned. And so I woke up the day of the concert. I had this text from him at 1:30 a.m. saying, here it is, because again, this is our first time producing a song. We don't know what the F we're doing, but we're doing it. We know we're called to do it. And so the timeline was really, really crazy. And I uploaded it without listening to it. I was like, if I listen to this right now, it's not going to go out, and I will not have this go out. I know that I learned through doing, so I'm doing it. So then,
oh my gosh, I love this. This just makes it even that much better.
Like, the later I listened to it, I was like, oh, thank God. I was like, Nick, thank you so much. You crushed it. Like we had decided on some instrumentals and I had heard about 30 seconds of it up to that point, but it's a 3.5-minute song. And so I had no idea what to expect. And I'm just so grateful.
Oh, but I love that. 'Cause this is what I tell my clients. Like, I have someone who's starting a new business right now. And I'm just like, let me tell you what I do when I record videos. I don't watch them. I do it once, unless I royally screw up something that I say and like the words don't come out. I record it once. I don't look at it. I post it. Like I put it on Vimeo, give it to my website team. And like, I don't even look at it again, because if I did, I would do it 34 times. And that's like, it's like, okay, if I'm in my heart and I am doing my best to show up and this feels authentic, it doesn't matter what my hair looks like. It doesn't matter what the lighting is. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Even what I say, people are going to feel it. So thank you for, right? Because that's a big deal. Like you're an emerging artist on Spotify, like you're releasing music. This is not just like you dropped something on SoundCloud and didn't tell anyone. So thank you. Yeah. Thank you for again, showing people what's possible. And I wouldn't be like jamming out to it in the car on my drives if you would have gotten it stuck in perfectionism and waited to release it. So with that, right? So there's clearly some work you get to do here to help activate, right, other people in their own self-expression and using their voice. So you have a voice reclamation e-course on the horizon. Do you want to share that before we pop off?
Yes, I would love to. So yeah, it's my spirit directives are becoming clearer and clearer. And it's just like you said, right? You're like, I don't want to do TikTok, but you got to go there. And my directive was put this together ASAP, get it out ASAP. So it's a very, it's a super, gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? Like low barrier product to entry, because it's just about women reclaiming their voice. And, sometimes I hesitate to say women because I'm like, men too, I want the masculine and the feminine. It's all about that sacred union. But really, the frequency I hold is for the divine feminine. And I'm here to awaken and help people remember who are in feminine bodies. That's just what I've noticed about like my sacred work at this time. And so this e-course is not about, hey, I want to sing and I want my voice to sound good. It's about coming into right relationship with your voice and the gravity of what that means. I think that, the voice is something that most people have had since they're born. And so it can be really easy to take advantage of it and just think that it's another thing, like your, right pinky, and to really understand that it's actually the seat of your truth and your purpose. And coming into relationship with your voice means coming into relationship with your soul, and coming into relationship with your soul transforms your world. So it's an e-course about really understanding all of the things that contribute to using your voice, opening your voice, the different blocks and clearings, and it comes with a few practices, but it's really about claiming like this reclamation. The priestess reawakens. It's like, hey, we've had this voice before. Our voice is our power, and I'm here to declare that it is mine now. And I'm going to own it, and I'm going to love it, and I'm going to have reverence for it and adoration, and I'm going to treat it with the respect that it deserves. So that's what the course is about.
Is it live or pre-recorded?
It's pre-recorded.
Okay,
So it's
cool.
a pre-recorded.
Because I think I'm going to sign up.
Well, I've had so much fun today. I'm happy to gift it to you. So it's available for pre-order right now. It'll be going live next month. And by next month, I mean May. So I'll send you a copy, and also some type of goodie for your community to get a special deal too.
Yeah, special discount code. So we'll make sure to put all of that in the show notes once it launches. And again, just noticing the synchronicities of Dani and myself. Like can you tell? It's like, oh my gosh, we could do this forever, because
I know, I'm like, wait, can't we talk for 3 more hours?
Yeah. We've definitely got the fire. We've got the zest for life. Like once you start to connect with your divinity and your humanity, everything is like, you just are so alive and people feel that. And my self-expression looks a little bit different, but there's a lot of synchronicities. And this is the beauty and the fun. Like I cannot wait to see what you create. Also knowing that it's showing me what's possible for me continuing to self-express and co-create with the universe and be of service in the world. So is there any final thoughts that you want to leave our peeps with before we pop off here?
I just want to say you fucking got this, to anyone who's listening, you've got this. You've got this, you've got this, you've got this. Even if you don't feel like it, there are legions of us who are saying yes to our hearts and yes to our voice. And in that way, we're all connected. And so, just sending out all that love.
Thank you. And when we were like sending Instagram messages back and forth to each other, all giddy, I was like, do you cuss? Because I cuss. And I've been getting like, I cuss so much more in my podcast, because especially when I'm doing solo casts, it's like, this is actually me. And I'm a spiritual being, and I cuss, and I listen to Priestess Reawakens with all my windows down as loud as humanly possible at a stoplight. And this is maybe that's not you, right? Like maybe that's not your jam, but what is your authentic self-expression? If you're listening to this, like what part of you is holding back? What part of you gets to be revealed a little bit more to yourself and to those in your life? And I promise the more you just keep slowly peeling back the layers and putting one foot in front of the other, next thing you know, you might be also, so inspired by Dani that you're releasing your own spiritual tracks on Spotify.
I love that.
Thank you for the sacred work that you do. And who knows, maybe we'll get to play together in some fun pilgrimage trip coming year too.
Yes, that's definitely in our future. Absolutely. Thank you so much. I am so appreciative of, you stepping into your light and making this platform and just shining and giving so much permission to everyone who tunes in. So it's absolutely sacred work, and it's absolutely not easy work. And I just feel you do it with such grace and beauty. And I'm just tickled pink to be a part of it.
Right back at you, sister. And this is the relatability piece that Dani brings in, that is so important to me, right? It's like, we're just doing it. We're just doing it. That's all we can do. And we're having a lot of fun. And sometimes we cry for 8 hours, like in Egypt in a room. And then we have like eons and eons of life force pouring through us. It's all perfect. So
all in a
thank
day's
you.
work, babe.
Definitely find her on Instagram. You can check out her website. Be sure to check out the show notes, sign up for the course. I'm going to definitely tune in a bit and download the song on Spotify. And I'm sure there's going to be more. I know you've got some other fun things in the works as well, but we'll see you next week for another episode of Soulshine Radio. Much love, everyone. Bye.